Just one more set. Emma, stop being so weak, Marcus barked, hovering over me as I struggled with the weighted bar. My arms trembled, and shooting pain raced down my spine. I can't, I gasped. Something feels wrong. Nothing's wrong except your attitude, he snapped, adding another plate to the bar. You wanted my help getting fit. Now do I say? I'm the certified trainer here. My name is Emma Mitchell, and at 25, I trusted my older brother Marcus to help me get in shape. He'd recently gotten his personal training certification and insisted on training me for free, claiming it would help build his portfolio. Our parents were thrilled, proud that their successful son was helping his unmotivated sister. If only they knew what was really happening in these sessions. Marcus had always been the family golden child. At 28, he had the perfect physique, the certification, and our parents' unwavering support. When I mentioned wanting to get healthier, they immediately volunteered him as my trainer. You're lucky, Mom said. He usually charges $200 per session. The pain started 3 weeks into our training. Small twinges at first, easily dismissed as normal workout soreness. But then it got worse. The exercises Marcus chose seemed increasingly aggressive, far from the beginner routines I'd researched online. The form feels wrong, I said one day, struggling with a complex lift. Maybe we should check. I'm the expert here. He cut me off, his voice sharp. You think you know better than someone with certification? This is why you've never succeeded at anything, Emma. You always quit when it gets hard. His words stung, but not as much as the searing pain that shot through my lower back as he forced me to continue. That night, I could barely walk. Mom found me crying in my room, clutching my back. Oh, stop being dramatic, she sighed, rolling her eyes. Marcus says you're just resisting the process. No pain, no gain, right? But this wasn't normal pain. Every session got worse, and Marcus got more aggressive. He'd invite his gym friends to watch, making comments about how his sister was finally getting serious, while forcing me through routines that left me gasping and dizzy. See, he'd say to them, this is why you need a proper trainer. Look how weak her form was before I started helping her. They'd laugh, and I'd fight back tears, trying to ignore the increasing numbness in my legs. Our parents watched these sessions with pride, praising Marcus's dedication to helping his sister. Nobody seemed to notice or care about my deteriorating condition. The breaking point came during what would be our final session. Marcus had me attempting a deadlift with weight that I knew was far too heavy. I really can't, I protested, feeling my back spasm. Marcus, please. Always with the excuses, he shouted, his face red with anger. Mom and Dad were right, you're just lazy. Looking for attention. Well, guess what? You're doing this lift or I'm telling everyone you quit. Again. I tried. God help me, I tried. The bar hadn't even left the ground when I felt something snap. The pain was explosive, radiating through my entire body. My legs gave out, and I crumpled to the floor, unable to move. Marcus stood over me, disgust clear on his face. Get up, Emma. Stop being so dramatic. But I couldn't get up. The numbness in my legs had turned complete, and panic started setting in. I can't feel my legs, I whispered, terror creeping into my voice. Marcus, I really can't feel my legs. He called our parents instead of an ambulance. They arrived to find me still on the floor, tears streaming down my face. She's just trying to get out of training, Marcus told them, his voice full of fake concern. You know how she gets. Mom knelt beside me, frustration clear in her expression. Emma, honey, you're embarrassing your brother in front of his clients. He's trying to help you. My legs, I managed to say through the pain. I can't feel my legs. Dad stepped forward, his voice stern. That's enough. Marcus is a certified professional. If he says you're fine, you're fine. Now get up. But I couldn't. For the first time in my life, I physically couldn't follow their orders. The pain was blinding, and the numbness was spreading. Finally, despite their protests, someone called an ambulance. The EMTs didn't dismiss my pain. They didn't tell me I was being dramatic. They took one look at my condition and moved with urgent efficiency, carefully immobilizing my spine before loading me into the ambulance. As they wheeled me out, I heard Marcus telling them about my history of exaggeration and how I was always looking for attention. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was my family's faces, not concerned, but annoyed at the scene I caused. They had no idea that the MRI would soon show exactly what Marcus's expert training had done to my spine. No idea that their golden child certification wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. No idea that their daughter's life was about to change forever. And Marcus? He had no idea that his portfolio building was about to turn into something much more serious. The emergency room was a blur of activity. Doctors rushed around, ordering tests and asking questions about the training sessions. When I mentioned Marcus's certification, they exchanged glances I couldn't quite read. "Your brother's been training you for how long?" the neurologist asked, reviewing my intake forms. 3 months. I managed through gritted teeth. He's certified. "Through which organization?" she interrupted, looking up sharply. Before I could answer, my family burst into the ER. Marcus immediately took control, pulling out a card from his wallet. "I'm her trainer, here's my certification." Everything was done properly. The neurologist took one look at the card and her expression hardened. "This isn't a recognized certification. Where exactly did you receive your training?" Marcus's face flushed. "Online, but I have dozens of successful clients." "Online?" The doctor cut him off. "Did you complete any in-person practical training? Any anatomy courses? Injury prevention certification?" The silence that followed was deafening. My parents, who had been standing proudly behind Marcus, suddenly looked uncertain. "The MRI results are ready," a nurse announced, saving Marcus from having to answer. The neurologist excused herself, leaving my family in uncomfortable silence. 20 minutes later, she returned with several scans. The images she put up on the light box made even my mother gasp. "These show severe herniation in multiple discs," the doctor explained, pointing to dark areas on the scan. "The compression on your spinal cord is significant. This kind of damage doesn't happen overnight. These injuries have been accumulating for weeks, possibly months." My father stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly, but Marcus said, "Mr. Mitchell," the neurologist interrupted firmly, "your daughter needs immediate surgery. The damage your son's training has caused could have left her permanently paralyzed. As it is, she'll need extensive rehabilitation." The room spun as I processed her words. Surgery, rehabilitation. All because I trusted my brother, because I'd listened when everyone told me to push through the pain. "I want to file a report," I said quietly, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "About the false certification." "Emma," my mother exclaimed, "he's your brother. He was trying to help." The neurologist stepped between us. "Mrs. Mitchell, your son's actions constitute gross negligence. He misrepresented his qualifications and caused serious bodily harm. This isn't about family loyalty anymore." Marcus, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly found his voice. "You can't prove anything." She signed a waiver. The doctor's eyes narrowed. "A waiver? May I see it?" Marcus fumbled with his phone, pulling up a document. The neurologist took one look and handed it back. "This generic online waiver doesn't cover fraudulent credentials or willful negligence. In fact, it's dated after some of your sister's injuries already occurred." My parents' perfect image of their son was crumbling before their eyes. Dad sank into a chair, while Mom kept shaking her head in denial. "We need to prep you for surgery," the nurse said gently, touching my arm. "Your family can wait outside." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I heard Marcus arguing with our parents in the hallway. "She's just jealous of my success. She's trying to ruin me." The last thing I saw before the anesthesia took hold was the neurologist speaking quietly with a hospital administrator, my brother's fake certification card in her hand. When I woke up hours later, my room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. A thick bandage wrapped around my lower back, and I still couldn't feel my legs properly, but the searing pain was finally dulled. A young police officer sat beside my bed, notebook in hand. "Ms. Mitchell, when you're ready, we'd like to take your statement about the fraudulent certification and resulting injuries." I nodded slowly, the fog of anesthesia still heavy in my mind. "Where's my family?" "Your parents are speaking with hospital administration," she said carefully. "Your brother, he left after being served with preliminary papers regarding his unauthorized practice and fraudulent credentials." Of course he had. Marcus had always run when things got tough, leaving others to deal with the consequences. But this time would be different. I'm ready to make my statement, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I want to make sure he never does this to anyone else. The officer nodded, pen poised over her notebook. As I began recounting everything, the escalating exercises, the ignored protests, the warning signs everyone dismissed, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about my injury anymore. It was about standing up to years of manipulation and negligence masked as tough love. My phone lit up with a text from Marcus. Hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I handed the phone to the officer without responding. Let him think he was the victim. The MRI didn't lie, and neither would I. The hard truth was about to come out, whether my family was ready for it or not. 6 months after the surgery, I sat in my physical therapist's office, watching a video of myself taking my first unassisted steps. It wasn't pretty, my movements were shaky, and I needed parallel bars for support. But it was progress. You're doing incredibly well, Emma, Dr. Santos said, smiling. Most patients with your level of injury take much longer to reach this stage. The journey hadn't been easy. 3 surgeries, countless therapy sessions, and a complete overhaul of my life. But I was walking, something the initial prognosis hadn't guaranteed. My phone buzzed with another message from Mom. Marcus's hearing is tomorrow. Please reconsider testifying. He's suffering enough. I turned the phone face down. My brother's suffering. He'd been running an illegal training business out of local gyms, using a fake certification he'd bought online. The investigation had uncovered 3 other clients with serious injuries, though none as severe as mine. My parents still couldn't accept reality. They paid for Marcus's lawyer, sold their vacation home to cover his mounting legal fees, and constantly pressured me to drop the charges. He's your brother, they plead. Family forgives. But this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about accountability. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse using just a cane, another small victory. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, wearing a suit that was supposed to make him look responsible. Our parents sat behind him, but my chair on the prosecution side remained empty. I'd chosen to sit with the other victims. When I took the stand, I spoke clearly and calmly, describing every ignored warning sign, every dismissed complaint, every moment Marcus chose his ego over my safety. I showed the court my medical records, the MRI images, the documented progression of spinal damage. And did your brother acknowledge any issues with your training? The prosecutor asked. No, I replied, meeting Marcus's eyes. He said I was being dramatic, that I was weak, even when I couldn't feel my legs. He told our parents I was faking it. Marcus looked away first. Our mother was crying silently in the gallery, but I kept going. The truth needed to be heard. The judge's verdict was unequivocal. Marcus was banned from working in any fitness-related industry, ordered to pay restitution to all his victims, and sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraudulent practice resulting in bodily harm. You've destroyed our family, Mom sobbed as they led Marcus away. How could you do this to your own brother? No, Mom, I said quietly. He destroyed himself. I just refused to let him destroy me too. 1 year later, I stood in front of a room full of physical therapy students at the local university. My story had become a cautionary tale about unlicensed trainers and ignored red flags. The damage wasn't just physical, I told them, walking slowly across the stage. It was the betrayal of trust, the dismissal of pain, the gaslighting that made me doubt my own body's warnings. That's why proper certification and training matter. That's why listening to your clients matters. After my speech, a young woman approached me. My brother's been training people from our garage, she said hesitantly. He says certifications are just paper. I gave her my card, which now read Emma Mitchell, patient advocate and safety consultant. Call me, I said. Let's make sure your brother doesn't make the same mistakes. Marcus was released after 14 months, his sentence reduced for good behavior. He tried to contact me through various family members, claiming he'd found God and wanted to make amends. I sent him a single message. Real amends start with real accountability. When you're ready to admit what you did, not just what you got caught doing, we can talk. I haven't heard from him since. My parents eventually sold their house to pay the restitution costs. They still believe I was too harsh. That family should handle things privately, but they've stopped trying to force a reconciliation. Today, I work with certification boards and gym safety organizations, sharing my story and helping create stronger regulations for personal trainers. My walk still isn't perfect. Some nerve damage will never fully heal, but I'm stronger now than I ever was under Marcus' training. Yesterday, I received a letter from one of the other victims. She finally completed her physical therapy and was starting law school, specializing in fitness industry regulation. Your courage to speak up changed my life, she wrote. You showed me that sometimes the strongest thing we can do is stand up to family. Standing at my window, watching the sunset, I touched the scar on my back, a permanent reminder of trusting the wrong person. But it's also a reminder of my strength, my resilience, and the power of speaking truth, even when it hurts. Sometimes family isn't who we should trust the most. Sometimes the real healing begins when we stop protecting those who hurt us and start protecting ourselves. And that's a lesson worth all the pain it took to learn it. This business belongs to my mother. You stole everything from her. Amanda's voice echoed through my office as she stormed in, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Behind her, a man in an expensive suit clutched a briefcase, looking every bit the stereotypical corporate lawyer. I'm Isabella Martinez, 42, and for the past 15 years, I've built Martinez Organics from a small farmer's market stall into a multi-million-dollar organic beauty empire. Now, my stepsister was here to try to take it all away. Mrs. Martinez, the lawyer began, placing his briefcase on my desk with practiced authority. We have evidence that the original concept and formulations for your product line were developed by Margaret Wilson, my client's mother. We're here to discuss transferring ownership back to its rightful. I held up my hand, cutting him off. Before you continue, there's something you both need to see. My voice remained steady as I reached for my laptop, though my hands wanted to shake with 15 years of suppressed anger. Amanda sneered, tossing her perfectly styled hair. What could you possibly show us? Mom told me everything before she passed away last month. How you stole her journal of recipes, how you took advantage of her kindness. I turned my laptop around, clicking play on a video file I kept safe all these years. The security footage was slightly grainy but clear enough. There I was 15 years younger, sitting across from Margaret in this very office when it was just a tiny rental space. $5,000, Youngmi said in the video, pushing a business proposal across the desk. That's all I'm asking for. The farmers market sales prove the concept works. People love the products. Margaret's younger self picked up the proposal, barely glancing at it before dropping it back on the desk. Isabella, dear, this is worthless. Natural beauty products. Everyone knows real cosmetics need proper chemicals. You're wasting your time. I watched Amanda's face change as she heard her mother's voice dismiss my dreams so casually, but there was more. But these are your recipes, Youngmi protested in the video. Don't you want to be part of making them successful? Margaret's laugh was cruel. Those old recipes, they're nothing but garbage I picked up from my grandmother. If you want to waste your time with them, go ahead. I want nothing to do with this foolishness. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably as the video continued, showing Margaret signing a document. And this paperwork? Youngmi asked. Yes, you have my permission to use any of those old recipes. I'd be embarrassed to be associated with them anyway. Just don't expect me to invest in this nonsense. I stopped the video, the silence in my office deafening. That document she signed, it's a legal release of any claim to the recipes or business concept, witnessed by a notary who was just off camera. Would you like to see it? Amanda's face had turned an interesting shade of red. She was just having a bad day, she didn't mean. This was just the first video, I interrupted, pulling out a thick folder. I have 15 years of documentation. Every time Margaret mocked the business, every time she told people she was embarrassed her stepdaughter was playing with herbs instead of getting a real job. That is, until last year, when we hit $50 million in annual revenue. The lawyer was already packing up his briefcase, clearly recognizing a losing battle. But I wasn't done. You want to know the real irony, Amanda? 5 years ago, Margaret came to me asking to buy in, offered me $2 million for a 10% stake. I pulled out another file. I turned her down, but I recorded that conversation too. Would you like to see your mother trying to claim she'd always believed in the business? Why? Amanda's voice cracked. Why did you keep all of this? I leaned back in my chair, memories of those early years washing over me, the farmers' markets in the rain, mixing formulas in my tiny apartment kitchen, delivering orders from my beat-up car while Margaret and Amanda lived in luxury, mocking my efforts. Because your mother taught me something valuable the day she rejected my proposal. She taught me that the only person I could rely on was myself. So I documented everything, protecting myself from the day I knew would come, when suddenly, the business she called worthless would become something she tried to claim. But Mom said, Amanda started. Your mom said a lot of things, Amanda. The difference is, I can prove what she really said and did. I gestured to my office door. Now, unless you want me to show these videos to every business magazine that's been begging for the real story of Martinez Organics founding, I suggest you leave. The lawyer practically dragged Amanda out, leaving me alone with the evidence of 15 years of preparation. I picked up my phone to call my attorney, knowing this wouldn't be the last attempt to claim what I built. But I was ready. I'd always been ready. Margaret might have thought those old recipes were worthless, but I'd known better, just like I'd known that someday someone would try to take it all away. What Margaret never understood was that success isn't just about having good ideas. It's about being willing to believe in them when no one else will. And about keeping really, really good records. The morning after Amanda's failed attempt to claim my business, I arrived at the office to find my social media notifications exploding. Amanda had gone on a rampage, posting a carefully edited version of events that painted me as the villain who had stolen her poor mother's legacy. Your stepsister is quite creative with her storytelling, my PR director, Sophia, said as she laid printouts of the posts on my desk. She's managed to get quite a few family members riled up. I scanned the comments beneath Amanda's posts. Distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly experts on my company's history, sharing invented stories about how Margaret had always planned to turn her grandmother's recipes into a business. Should we respond? Sophia asked, her finger hovering over her tablet. Not yet, I replied, reaching for my secure external drive. Let's see how far they want to take this. I didn't have to wait long. By lunchtime, Amanda had escalated to television, appearing on a local morning show with crocodile tears and a story about how her dying mother's last wish was to reclaim her stolen heritage. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Isabella, please be reasonable. Can't you give your sister something? For family peace? Family peace. That phrase brought back memories of my teenage years after he'd married Margaret. Every time she or Amanda had taken something of mine, every time they'd excluded me or mocked my dreams, it was always about family peace. I texted back, like when you asked me to give Amanda my college fund for family peace, or when Margaret convinced you to put the house in her name for family peace. He didn't respond. I pulled up the local station's website and clicked through to their contact form. Within an hour, their legal department would receive a comprehensive file of evidence proving every word of Amanda's interview false. Let them deal with the threat of a defamation lawsuit. Ms. Martinez? My assistant poked her head in. There's something you should see at the flagship store. I pulled up our security cameras on my laptop. Amanda was there, along with 3 other relatives, holding signs and telling customers how Martinez Organics was built on stolen family secrets. I almost laughed. If they wanted to make this public, I'd give them public. I pressed the intercom. Sophia, remember that documentary crew that's been asking to tell our company's story? Call them back. Tell them I'm ready to talk. All of it, she asked. All of it. 2 hours later, I sat across from a respected documentary filmmaker, surrounded by cameras. On the table between us lay the evidence of my journey, the original farmer's market permit, my first batch of handwritten formulas, and photos from those early days. Let's start at the beginning, the filmmaker said. Tell us about the first Martinez Organics product. I pulled out an old battered journal. This was my mother's, my birth mother's. She died when I was 12, but she taught me about natural healing. When my dad married Margaret 3 years later, I was excited because she said she shared that passion. She had her grandmother's recipes just like I had my mother's. I opened the journal carefully. I asked Margaret to teach me her recipes, to help me combine them with what my mother had taught me. She laughed and said they were worthless. But she let me have them, signed them over legally because she thought I was wasting my time. And the first product? A healing salve combining my mother's Evla formula with Margaret's grandmother's calendula infusion. I refined it, tested it, worked with herbalists to perfect it. Every step documented, every improvement recorded. I smiled, remembering those long nights of experimentation. It's still our bestseller. Your stepsister claims your success is built on her family's heritage. Her family's heritage that they threw away, I corrected. I have years of footage of Margaret mocking these recipes, calling them old-fashioned nonsense. But I saw their value. I respected the traditional knowledge while innovating and making it better. The interview continued for hours. I shared everything: the rejections, the struggles, the slow build from farmers markets to our first store. The documentation proving every step was mine, every innovation earned through hard work and dedication. As the crew packed up, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. You think you're so clever with your proof and your records. But what about the family? What about Mom's memory? I thought about Margaret's memory, how she tried to buy into my company once it was successful. How she'd suddenly claimed pride in our family business when magazines started calling. How she'd never once apologized for those early years of mockery and doubt. I texted back, Margaret's memory is preserved perfectly in all those videos I kept. Would you like me to share them publicly? Let everyone see exactly who she really was. The response came quickly. You wouldn't dare. But she knew I would. Just like I dared to believe in myself when no one else did. Just like I dared to build something from nothing, protecting myself every step of the way. My phone buzzed again. This time with a message from the station's legal department. They were pulling Amanda's interview and issuing a retraction. The evidence I'd sent was concerning. I looked out my office window at the protesters below, still holding their signs about stolen legacies. Soon they'd learn what real legacy meant, not just old recipes in a book, but the courage to believe in them, the determination to prove their worth, and the wisdom to document every step of the journey. Margaret had taught me that last lesson well, though not in the way she'd intended. Sometimes the best teachers are the ones who show you exactly what not to do. The documentary aired 3 weeks later. I watched it alone in my office, a cup of herbal tea, made from one of my mother's original recipes, growing cold on my desk. They'd done a beautiful job telling the story. The contrast between my farmer's market beginnings and our current success was striking. But what hit hardest were the old security videos showing Margaret's constant dismissal of the business throughout the years. This silly little herb shop, she'd said in one clip from 10 years ago, walking past my first store. I can't believe she's still wasting her time. Another from 7 years ago, natural beauty products. Please, when is Isabella going to grow up and get a real job? And finally, just 2 years ago, her attempting to buy in, darling, I always knew you had potential. Let's make this a true family business. My phone started buzzing almost immediately after the credits rolled. First came the text from Amanda. You've destroyed Mom's reputation. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened an email that had just arrived from my father. Isabella, it read, I watched the documentary. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. I should have supported you. I should have seen what Margaret was doing. Can we talk? Before I could reply, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Martinez, your stepmother's sister is here. She insists on speaking with you. I almost refused, but curiosity won out. Send her in. Aunt Helen looked older than I remembered, her face lined with what looked like genuine remorse. In her hands, she clutched an old leather-bound book. I found this while cleaning out Margaret's things, she said without preamble, placing the book on my desk. It's our grandmother's original recipe book, the one Margaret claimed you stole. I opened it carefully. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, detailed instructions for herbal remedies and beauty preparations. But what caught my eye were the notes in the margins, written in a different hand. Those are Margaret's notes, Helen explained. From before she married your father, she tried for years to make these recipes work, to start a business. But she failed. She couldn't figure out how to modernize them, how to make them appealing to today's market. I looked up, understanding dawning. That's why she was so bitter about my success. Helen nodded. When she saw you succeeding where she had failed, well, you know, my sister, she couldn't handle it. But watching that documentary, seeing how you built everything from scratch, how you improved the formulas while honoring their origins, she wiped a tear. Our grandmother would have been proud. After Helen left, I sat for a long time looking at the book. Finally, I picked up my phone and typed out a message to Amanda. The flagship store has a beautiful display case in the entrance. I'd like to put your great-grandmother's original recipe book there, with a plaque honoring her contribution to natural beauty traditions. Not because you demanded it, but because it's the right thing to do. Her legacy lives on in every product we make, alongside my mother's recipes, my innovations, and 15 years of hard work. I hit send, then wrote to my father. Coffee next week? Just us. The responses came within minutes. Amanda, I'll think about it. Dad, name the time and place. A week later, we installed the display case. The old recipe book sat open to a page about calendula infusion, the same recipe I'd used in my first product. Next to it, I placed my mother's journal, open to her AITA formula. Above both, a simple plaque read, honoring the wisdom of those who came before, while blazing new trails forward. That evening, as I was leaving the office, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter from Margaret, dated just before her death. Isabella, by the time you read this, Amanda will have made her move to claim the business. I put her up to it, my final act of bitterness. But the truth is, you succeeded where I failed. You took those old recipes and made them into something remarkable. I was too proud to admit it in life, but I can at least write it down in death. The business is yours. You earned it. Margaret. I carefully added the letter to my files, one last piece of documentation to keep safe. But I knew I wouldn't need it. The truth had finally come out, and no amount of bitterness could change what I built. As I turned off the lights in my office, I caught my reflection in the window. Behind me, the city lights sparkled, and somewhere out there, my mother, my birth mother, was smiling. Her daughter had taken her lessons about natural healing and built an empire, one that helped millions of people feel beautiful the natural way. That was the real legacy, not the recipes, not the formulas, but the determination to believe in something when everyone else doubted, and the wisdom to document every step of the journey just in case. I gave it to Ashley. She deserves it more than you. Margaret's voice dripped with satisfaction through my phone. After all, she's my actual daughter. My hand trembled as I stared at my empty jewelry box, the velvet indent where my grandmother's vintage sapphire ring had rested for the past 5 years now painfully bare. I'm Victoria Bennett, 32, and my mother-in-law had just crossed the line she couldn't come back from. You went into my bedroom and took my grandmother's ring. I kept my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. That ring is worth $250,000, Margaret. It's not yours to give away. Oh, please, she scoffed. Your grandmother's ring? We both know James bought that for you. And since he's my son, I have every right to give family heirlooms to my daughter. Ashley's wedding is in 3 months, and she deserves something special. I closed my eyes, counting to 10. Margaret had never accepted me even after 7 years of marriage to her precious son James. In her eyes, I was the gold digger who'd stolen her boy away from the life she'd planned for him. She never missed an opportunity to remind me that Ashley, my sister-in-law, was more worthy of being part of their family. What Margaret didn't know, what only James and I knew, was that the ring truly had belonged to my grandmother. It was her most prized possession, a rare Ceylon sapphire passed down through generations. She'd given it to me on her deathbed, making me promise to keep it in the family. Margaret, that ring has a certificate of authenticity and a documented history. It's not just jewelry, it's my family's legacy. I tried to reason with her, though I knew it was pointless. She laughed, the sound grating through the phone. Legacy? Your family? Don't make me laugh, Victoria. Everyone knows your family was nothing before James. Besides, Ashley's already taken it to get fitted at Carmichael's. There's nothing you can do about it now. My heart stopped. Carmichael's, the high-end jeweler where my grandmother had maintained her collection for decades, where Mr. Carmichael himself had personally handled the ring's documentation and knew its entire history. You sent Ashley to Carmichael's? I couldn't help but smile, though Margaret couldn't see it. Of course, only the best for my daughter. She's there now, having it sized. Unlike you, she has delicate hands worthy of such a beautiful piece. I checked the time, 2:15 p.m. Mr. Carmichael would be at the shop now, doing his afternoon appointments. Thank you for letting me know, Margaret. You've been very helpful. What's that supposed to? I hung up before she could finish. My hands were steady now as I dialed the familiar number of Carmichael's. The receptionist recognized my name immediately. Being the granddaughter of one of their most valued clients had its perks. Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Carmichael was just about to call you. He's with a young lady claiming to be your sister-in-law. About the Ceylon sapphire? Yes, Amanda. Could you put him through? It's rather urgent. A moment later, Mr. Carmichael's warm voice filled the line. Victoria, my dear, I have quite a situation here. I know, Mr. Carmichael, my mother-in-law took the ring from my jewelry box and gave it to her daughter. She's trying to pass it off as a family heirloom from their side. Ah, he said, understanding filling his voice. That explains the young lady's confusion when I asked about the certificate of authenticity and the ring's history. She seems quite insistent that it belongs to her family, but of course I have the complete documentation of provenance right here in front of me. In the background, I could hear Ashley's voice rising in protest. Would you like me to explain the ring's true history to them? He asked, professional as ever but with a hint of satisfaction. Mr. Carmichael had known my grandmother for 40 years. He took the integrity of fine jewelry very seriously. Yes, please. And Mr. Carmichael? My husband should be there in about 10 minutes. He was closer to the shop when I called him. Excellent. I believe the situation will be resolved quite definitively then. I hung up and sank into my chair, the adrenaline finally catching up with me. 7 years of Margaret's subtle jabs, her constant attempts to undermine my marriage, her clear favoritism of Ashley. It had all led to this moment of overreach. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Almost there. Mom's blowing up my phone. Did she really break into our bedroom? I replied with a simple yes. Mr. Carmichael has the security footage from Grandma's last visit when she documented the ring's transfer to me. James' response was immediate. Time for Mom to finally face consequences. I smiled, thinking of Margaret's face when she realized just how thoroughly her plan was about to backfire. The ring wasn't just valuable. It was documented, certified, and legally mine. More importantly, her actions have finally pushed James past his breaking point. My phone started ringing again. Margaret's number. I let it go to voicemail, knowing that the real show was about to begin at Carmichael's. Sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's letting people's own actions expose their true nature. The events at Carmichael's unfolded exactly as I'd expected. James called me on his drive home, his voice tight with controlled anger. You should have seen Mom's face when she burst into the shop, he said. She was all righteous indignation, demanding to know why Ashley was being harassed about the ring's documentation. Then Mr. Carmichael pulled out the certified papers. I could picture the scene perfectly. How did she react? First, she tried claiming your grandmother must have bought the ring recently, that it couldn't be a real family heirloom. That's when Mr. Carmichael played the security footage from 5 years ago. I smiled, remembering that day. My grandmother, elegant even in her final months, had insisted on properly documenting the ring's transfer. The documentation is critical, Victoria, she'd said. Fine jewelry comes with fine responsibilities. Then what happened? I asked, though I could guess. Mr. Carmichael showed them the ring's complete history, photos, certificates, insurance documents, everything. Mom started to deflate, but Ashley lost it. She started crying about how her wedding was ruined and how I always chose you over family. And what did you say? There was a pause, and I could hear the weight in James's voice. I told them both that you are my family, that breaking into our bedroom and stealing your inheritance was unforgivable. Mom tried to interrupt, saying she was just trying to make things fair, to give Ashley something special. Let me guess, she didn't think there was anything wrong with taking it? Oh, it gets better, James said, his tone bitter. She actually said, it's not stealing if it's family. That's when Mr. Carmichael mentioned he was legally obligated to report jewelry theft over $100,000. I sat up straighter. He didn't. He did. Very politely explained that while he preferred to handle this as a family matter, he had ethical obligations as a certified jeweler. Mom's face turned white so fast I thought she might faint. The image was satisfying, but I felt a twinge of worry. How did Ashley take it? She handed over the ring immediately, suddenly very interested in not being part of the situation. She started saying she had no idea it was actually your grandmother's, that Mom had told her it was a family piece James had given me. That tracked with what I knew of Ashley. She was spoiled and entitled, yes, but not usually malicious. That came from Margaret. The best part, James continued, was when Mr. Carmichael brought out a second set of documents, photographs of Mom's own engagement ring, which she sold 20 years ago. Turns out that was the actual family heirloom she should have been worried about. I gasped. What? Yeah, apparently she sold my grandmother's engagement ring back when Dad was sick. Never told anyone. She's been wearing a replica all these years, pretending it was the original. Mr. Carmichael recognized it as soon as she came in today because he'd handled the sale. The irony was almost too perfect. Margaret, who'd spent years accusing me of being a gold digger, had secretly sold her own family's heirloom. How did Ashley react to that? She left, just grabbed her purse and walked out. Mom tried to follow her, but Ashley told her to stay away. I think finding out about Grandma's ring was the last straw. I could hear the pain in James's voice. For all their faults, this was still his family falling apart. I'm sorry it came to this, I said softly. Don't be, Mom's been pushing boundaries for years. She needed to face consequences eventually. He paused. Mr. Carmichael's keeping the ring in the vault for now. He suggested having it professionally cleaned and inspected, just to be safe. Good idea. I twisted my wedding band, thinking, what happens now? Now Mom has to deal with the fact that everyone knows what she did, both today and 20 years ago. Dad's going to be devastated about her selling Grandma's ring. And Ashley's going to have to find something else to wear at her wedding. After we hung up, I sat in our quiet house, processing everything. Margaret had finally overplayed her hand, and the consequences were spreading beyond just the ring. Years of manipulation and lies were unraveling, all because she couldn't resist one final power play. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. I'm so sorry. I really didn't know it was your grandmother's ring. Mom said, well, it doesn't matter what she said. I should have asked James directly. I stared at the message, considering my response. Ashley had been cruel over the years, but always following Margaret's lead. Maybe this was a chance for change. Would you like to have coffee tomorrow? I texted back. Just us? Her response was immediate. Yes, please. There's a lot I need to say. Another message popped up, this one from Margaret. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. Inside was a single line. I was only trying to make things right for my daughter. I thought of my grandmother, of her insistence on documentation, on doing things properly, of her final words to me. Take care of the ring, Victoria. It's not just about the jewelry, it's about knowing what matters and protecting it. I looked at Margaret's message again and typed a response. No, you were trying to take something that didn't belong to you. The consequences are yours to bear. Then I blocked her number, stood up, and went to make dinner. James would be home soon, and we had a lot to talk about. 3 months later, I sat in a small cafe, waiting for Ashley's arrival. Today was supposed to be her wedding day. Instead, she postponed it indefinitely after everything that happened with Margaret. The bell above the door chimed, and Ashley walked in, looking different from the polished, perfect image she usually maintained. Her hair was in a casual ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Especially today. How are you holding up? I asked, genuinely curious. She gave a small laugh. Better than I expected, actually. Tom and I are still together, but we're taking things slower. Turns out a lot of the rush to get married was Mom's pressure, not what we wanted. The waiter brought our coffees, and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The past 3 months had changed a lot of things in our family. Dad's selling the house, Ashley said suddenly. After finding out about Grandma's ring, he started digging into their finances. Turns out Mom's been hiding a lot more than just jewelry sales. I nodded. James had told me about the secret credit cards, the gambling debts, the systematic draining of their retirement accounts. Margaret's theft of my ring had opened a Pandora's box of financial deceit. How's your dad doing? Better now that he's taken control of everything. He's staying with Uncle Mike while the divorce proceedings go through. She stirred her coffee absently. Mom's not handling it well. She keeps saying everyone's abandoned her, that she was just trying to give me the wedding she never had. And what do you think about that? Ashley met my eyes directly. I think she's been lying to herself for so long, she doesn't know how to stop. The ring was just the final straw. Finding out she'd sold Grandma's engagement ring, she shook her head. That changed everything for Dad. I thought about James's father, a quiet man who'd always seemed overshadowed by Margaret's personality. Learning of the sale of his mother's ring had awakened something in him. Have you heard from her lately? I asked. She's staying with her sister in Florida. Sends me daily texts about how we're all going to regret treating her this way. Ashley sighed. The funny thing is, postponing the wedding was the best thing that could have happened. Tom and I are actually talking about what we want, not what Mom thinks we should have. The cafe was filling up with a lunch crowd, the buzz of conversation around us creating a cocoon of privacy. Victoria, Ashley said, her voice serious. I really am sorry, not just about the ring, but for everything. The way I treated you, the things I said. I was following Mom's lead, but that's no excuse. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. I found this in Mom's things when we were cleaning out the house. I think you should have it. Inside was a worn velvet jewelry box. When I opened it, I found old photographs. My grandmother at various ages, always wearing the sapphire ring. Mom must have taken these from your jewelry box when she took the ring. There's a letter too from your grandmother. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded the yellowed paper. My grandmother's elegant handwriting filled the page, detailing the ring's history, the women who had worn it, and their stories of love and resilience. Keep these safe for me, Ashley said softly. Maybe someday you'll share them with your own daughter. When I got home that evening, James was in the kitchen making dinner. The ring, now cleaned and secured, sat in its new home, a wall safe we'd installed after the incident. How was coffee with Ashley? He asked, stirring something that smelled delicious. Good, really good actually. She's changed a lot since everything happened. I shoved him the box of photographs. He looked through them carefully. Mom tried to erase your family's history, but she ended up exposing her own lies instead. Sometimes people's worst actions bring out the best in others, I said, thinking of how this crisis had strengthened some family bonds while breaking others. James pulled me close. Mom called again today. Left a voicemail saying she's changed, that she wants to make amends. And what do you think? I think actions speak louder than words. She's had years to choose differently, to treat you with respect. One crisis doesn't change who she is. I nodded, leaning into his embrace. The ring was more than just jewelry. It had become a catalyst for truth, forcing long-buried secrets and resentments into the light. Your grandmother would be proud, James said, kissing my forehead. Not just of how you protected the ring, but of how you handled everything after. Looking at the photographs spread across our kitchen counter, I saw generations of women who had worn the sapphire ring, each adding their own story to its legacy. Margaret had tried to steal that history, but in doing so, she'd only proved why she was never meant to be part of it. Sometimes the most valuable things we inherit aren't the ones that can be stolen. They're the strength, wisdom, and grace passed down through generations. No one could take that away, not even Margaret. The phone buzzed on my desk, interrupting my focus on quarterly projections. My daughter Emma's name flashed across the screen, unusual for a Tuesday afternoon when she should have been in school. Mom, her voice trembled. Grandma and Grandpa are here. They're moving all our stuff to the basement. I gripped my pen tighter, keeping my voice steady. What do you mean, sweetheart? They said we don't need such big rooms anymore. They're turning them into offices for their business. Mom, they're throwing our things down the basement stairs. My blood ran cold. Robert and Diana, my in-laws, had always been entitled, but this was crossing a line. They'd moved in with us temporarily 3 months ago after claiming financial troubles with their consulting firm. My husband James, ever the dutiful son, had insisted we help them. I'll be home in 20 minutes, Emma. Don't argue with them, just watch and remember everything they do. I ended the call and gathered my things, my mind racing. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. While they were busy converting my children's bedrooms into offices for their struggling business, they had no idea who had recently acquired majority shares in their company. When I pulled into our driveway, Diana was directing movers to carry my kids' desks downstairs. My son Lucas sat on the front steps, his shoulders slumped, watching his belongings disappear into the basement. Mom, he called out when he saw me. At 12, he was trying to be strong, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. Deanna turned, her face a mask of condescending pleasure. Oh good, you're home. We're making some necessary changes. The children really don't need all this space, and Robert and I need proper offices to run our business. I walked past her into the house, finding Robert setting up his computer in what had been Emma's room. Her posters were torn down, her bookshelf already emptied. The bright yellow walls she picked out herself were now covered with Robert's business certificates. "The basement is perfectly fine for the kids," he said without looking up. "They're young, they'll adjust. We need these rooms for important business matters." "Important business matters?" I repeated, my voice deliberately calm. "You mean for Mitchell and Mitchell Consulting?" "Exactly," Diana chimed in from the doorway. "We have important clients to meet. We can't have them coming to some dingy temporary office. Image is everything in consulting." I watched as they continued reorganizing the room, neither of them showing an ounce of concern for my children's feelings. Emma appeared behind Diana, her eyes red from crying. "Where are we supposed to do our homework?" she asked quietly. "The basement doesn't have proper lighting." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Diana snapped. "You can use the kitchen table. When we were young, we didn't have all these privileges. This will teach you some humility." I put my arm around Emma's shoulders. "Why don't you and Lucas go to Aunt Sarah's house for a few hours? I'll come get you later." Once the kids were safely out of the house, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. 3 months ago, when Mitchell and Mitchell Consulting started showing signs of trouble, I'd done some investigating. What I discovered was years of mismanagement, questionable accounting, and a company ripe for takeover. Through a series of carefully structured investments and shell companies, I'd acquired 51% of their shares. Robert and Diana had been so busy trying to maintain their lifestyle that they hadn't even noticed their company had a new owner. I pulled up my email and began composing a message to the board of directors. As majority shareholder, I had some concerns about the current management that needed to be addressed. I attached photos of my children's belongings strewn across the basement floor, evidence of the kind of judgment calls the current leadership was making. "The kitchen is a common area," Diana announced, walking in with an armload of files. "We'll need it for client meetings tomorrow afternoon." I closed my laptop slowly. "Tomorrow afternoon? I don't think that will work with my schedule." "Your schedule?" Robert scoffed, joining us. "This isn't about you. We have to rebuild our business. A little sacrifice from everyone is necessary." "Sacrifice?" I stood up, finally letting some of my anger show. "Like forcing your grandchildren into an unfinished basement? Like throwing their belongings down the stairs? That kind of sacrifice?" "Now see here," Robert started, his face reddening. "This is our house too now, and we need—" "No," I cut him off. "This is my house. My name is on the deed. You are guests who have dramatically overstayed your welcome and abused my children's space." Diana laughed, that condescending sound I'd grown to hate. "Please, we're family. Family helps each other. And right now, we need these spaces more than the children do. It's for the greater good." I picked up my phone as it buzzed with an email notification. The board had received my message and called for an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Perfect timing. "You're right about one thing," I said, gathering my things. "Family should help each other. Remember that tomorrow." "What's that supposed to mean?" Robert demanded. I smiled, thinking of the board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. "Just that tomorrow will be very interesting for Mitchell and Mitchell Consulting." Very interesting indeed. As I headed out to pick up my children, I could hear them arguing in the kitchen, probably planning which other parts of my house they would commandeer next. Let them plot. By this time tomorrow, they'd understand exactly who they were dealing with. I pulled up to Sarah's house, where Emma and Lucas were playing in the backyard. Tomorrow would change everything, but tonight my priority was making sure my children felt safe and valued. The rest would fall into place exactly as I planned. The next morning, I dressed with particular care, choosing a sharp charcoal suit that I usually reserve for major client presentations. Robert and Diana were already in their newly claimed offices when I left, not even bothering to ask where my children had spent the night. I arrived at Mitchell and Mitchell Consulting's headquarters 15 minutes before the emergency board meeting. Sandra, the board secretary, greeted me with a knowing smile. "Mrs. Harrison, we've been expecting you. The board members are quite interested in your findings." I nodded, straightening my jacket. I imagine they would be. "Has anyone informed Robert and Diana about the meeting?" "Yes, they've been called in. They should be here shortly." Sandra's eyes sparkled with anticipation. She'd worked with my in-laws for years and had witnessed their decline firsthand. Right on cue, Robert and Diana burst through the office doors, looking flustered. "What's this about an emergency board meeting?" Robert demanded, then stopped short when he saw me. "Elizabeth, what are you doing here?" Before I could respond, the boardroom doors opened. "Please, everyone, come in," Charles Montgomery, the board chairman, called out. "We have serious matters to discuss." Diana's eyes narrowed as she watched me take a seat at the table. "Why is our daughter-in-law at a board meeting?" Charles cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrison isn't just your daughter-in-law. She's our majority shareholder." The color drained from both their faces. Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "That's impossible. We would have known." "Would you?" I interrupted, sliding copies of my ownership documentation across the table. "Like you knew your company was failing. Like you knew your employees haven't received proper bonuses in 2 years while you maintained your country club membership." Diana grabbed the papers, her hands shaking. "This is a mistake. This can't be legal." "Oh, it's perfectly legal," Charles confirmed. "Mrs. Harrison acquired the shares through various investment groups over the past 3 months. All above board and properly documented." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the room's display screen. "Now let's discuss recent management decisions, starting with these photos." Images of my children's belongings scattered across the basement floor appeared on the screen. Robert and Diana shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "These photos demonstrate a concerning lack of judgment," I continued, my voice professional and calm. "If this is how you treat your own grandchildren, the board has to wonder how you're treating company resources." "This is personal family business," Diana protested. "It has nothing to do with the company." Charles leaned forward. "Character and judgment have everything to do with company leadership. Mrs. Harrison has also brought to our attention some questionable financial decisions." I clicked through to the next slides, showing years of mismanagement and questionable expenses. With each revelation, Robert and Diana seemed to shrink in their chairs. "The board has decided," Charles announced, effective immediately, to remove Robert and Diana Mitchell from their positions as CEO and COO of Mitchell & Mitchell Consulting. "You can't do this." Robert slammed his fist on the table. "This company is our legacy." "Was your legacy," I corrected. "Just like those bedrooms were my children's spaces. Funny how things change when someone with more power makes decisions without consulting you, isn't it?" Diana turned to me, tears welling in her eyes. "Where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do?" "The basement is perfectly fine," I replied, echoing their words from the day before. "You're older. You'll adjust. Although," I paused, gathering my papers, "you might want to start looking for a new place altogether. As of this morning, I've rescinded your invitation to stay in my home." "James won't allow this," Robert blustered. "When our son hears about this—" "James already knows," I cut him off. "I showed him the photos last night. He's the one who suggested I move up the timeline on this meeting." Their faces registered shock at this final betrayal. James had always been their safety net, their guarantee that they could behave however they wanted without consequences. "If you'll excuse me," I said, standing and straightening my jacket, "I need to get home and help my children move their belongings back to their proper rooms." As I walked out of the boardroom, I could hear Deanna beginning to cry and Robert arguing weakly with Charles about severance packages. I felt no satisfaction in their distress. This wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences and protecting what mattered most. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "How did it go?" "Just as planned," I replied. "They're out of their positions. Are you still okay with having them move out?" "More than okay," he texted back. "I should have stood up to them years ago. I'm sorry it took them hurting the kids to make me see who they really are." I drove home, where Emma and Lucas were waiting with their Aunt Sarah. Their faces lit up when I told them they could return to their rooms. "Really?" Emma hugged me tight. "We don't have to stay in the basement." "Never," I promised. "Those are your rooms, and no one has the right to take them from you." As we began moving their belongings back upstairs, I thought about Robert and Diana, who would soon learn that actions have consequences, that power shouldn't be abused, and that true family means protecting each other, not exploiting each other. Lucas paused while carrying his books upstairs. "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa going to be mad at us?" I pulled him close. "They might be mad for a while, but that's their problem to work through. Your only job is to be a kid and feel safe in your own home." By evening, the rooms were restored, though some damage remained, scuff marks on Emma's walls, a crack in Lucas's desk from the basement stairs. But those could be fixed. What mattered was that my children were back where they belonged, and the people who had hurt them were facing the consequences of their actions. A week after the board meeting, Our house finally felt like home again. Emma's yellow walls had been repainted, Lucas's gaming posters rehung, and the basement restored to its original purpose as a storage space. Robert and Diana had moved out 3 days ago, leaving behind a mess of paperwork and bitter accusations. I sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the company's latest reports when James walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "Mom and Dad just called," he said, sliding 1 cup toward me. "They're staying at the Residence Inn while they figure things out. They want to know if we can discuss a compromise." I looked up from my laptop. "What kind of compromise?" "They'll apologize to the kids if we give them their jobs back. Dad swears he's learned his lesson." James shook his head, disappointment clear in his expression. "They still don't get it, do they?" "No," I agreed. "They don't. This was never about getting an apology. It was about protecting our children and showing them that they matter." My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "You've destroyed our lives. Is this how you teach your children to treat family?" I showed the message to James, who sighed heavily. "Should I talk to them?" "No," I replied, deleting the message. "They need to understand that actions have consequences. Besides, the board has already appointed new leadership, and the company's doing better than it has in years." It was true. In just a week, Mitchell and Mitchell Consulting had seen a surge in employee morale. Years of Robert and Diana's mismanagement had left good people feeling undervalued and overlooked. The new CEO, Sarah Chen, had already implemented changes that should have been made years ago. That evening, as we sat down for family dinner, something that had been impossible when Robert and Diana commandeered our kitchen for their client meetings, Emma spoke up, her voice uncertain. "Mom?" She pushed her food around her plate. "Today at school, Grandma was waiting outside. She tried to talk to me about how we're breaking up the family." I felt James tense beside me. "She did what?" "I didn't talk to her," Emma assured us quickly. "I went back inside and told Principal Martinez, like you said to do if they showed up." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You did exactly the right thing, sweetheart. You don't have to engage with them when they try to manipulate you." Lucas looked up from his dinner. "Is it wrong that I don't miss them, even though they're family?" "No," James answered firmly. "Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, love, and treating each other with kindness. What they did, taking your rooms, dismissing your feelings, trying to make you feel bad about having your own space, that's not how family acts." The next morning, I received an email from Charles Montgomery. The board had unanimously voted to change the company's name to Summit Consulting Group, marking a complete break from the Mitchell legacy. Attached was a photo of the new sign being installed at headquarters. I forwarded the email to Robert and Diana with a short note. Sometimes, a fresh start is the best path forward. Diana's response came within minutes. "You think you've won, but you're teaching your children to be ruthless. One day, they'll do the same to you." I thought about her words as I walked through our house that evening. Emma was practicing piano in her room, the music floating down the hallway. Lucas sat at his restored desk, working on a science project. These were the moments Robert and Diana had tried to steal, not just rooms, but our children's sense of security and worth. "You know," James said, coming up behind me, "I always thought keeping the peace with my parents was the right thing to do. But watching you stand up to them, showing our kids that they deserve to be protected, that's what real family leadership looks like." 3 months later, Summit Consulting Group had its best quarter in 5 years. I'd stepped back from day-to-day involvement, preferring to remain a silent majority shareholder. Robert and Diana had finally stopped trying to contact us, seemingly accepting that their actions had permanently altered our family dynamic. Emma and Lucas were thriving. The incident had taught them something valuable about standing up for themselves. Last week, Emma had confidently handled a bullying situation at school, telling the girl, "I don't have to accept being treated badly just because you think you have power over me." One evening, as I tucked Lucas into bed, he asked, "Mom, are you ever going to tell us what happened to Grandma and Grandpa's company?" I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people think having power means they can treat others however they want. But real strength isn't about dominating others, it's about protecting what matters and standing up for what's right. He nodded thoughtfully. "Like how you protected our rooms?" "Exactly." I smiled, kissing his forehead. "And I always will." As I turned out his light, I thought about Diana's accusation of being ruthless. She was wrong. teaching my children that they deserve respect, that their boundaries mattered, that they didn't have to accept mistreatment even from family. That wasn't ruthlessness. That was love. The company would continue to thrive under its new leadership, but that was just business. The real victory was in our home, where my children slept peacefully in their own rooms, secure in the knowledge that they were valued, protected, and loved. Some would call it revenge, but I called it justice, the kind that heals and teaches rather than destroys. That, after all, was the most important legacy I could leave my children.